No. I think the ayes have it.
I ask the Leader of the House to move a motion to discharge orders of the day numbers 2 to 5, government business.
I understand it wishes the House to grant leave. There being no objection, leave is granted. The Leader of the Government business.
I move that the orders of the day numbers 2 to 5, government business, be discharged. Just briefly, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Communications Minister, when announcing this package of legislation relating to the media, made it clear that the government wouldn't be pursuing these reforms beyond this week if it did not secure the support of the Parliament. It is clear to me that it does not have the support of the House of Representatives to proceed, and therefore I move this resolution. And I thank the Shadow Minister for Communications for the cooperative way in which he's dealt with the procedural issues around this legislation, even though we, of course, have different policy positions on some of the issues before the House.
I put the question, and this is the question I move, that the Leader of the Government Business has moved that the Government Business orders of the day numbers 2 to 5 be discharged from the notice paper. And I call the member for Wentworth.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. This is a humiliating background by the government today. Only a week ago, the Communications Minister and the Prime Minister announced a set of so-called reforms to the media laws of this country that would, for the first time in our history, put a government official in a position where he or she was able to influence, indeed control, the content of newspapers and other media that has never been regulated by government in our history. We were told that there would be no bartering with the crossbenchers, that this was a take-it-or-leave-it proposition. Over the last 48 hours, the bartering with the crossbenchers has been so intense that as recently as this morning, the government was proposing to support an amendment by Mr Katter that would have had the result of the so-called public interest media advocate, this all-powerful media regulator, being appointed by a panel of 12 people who would have in turn been appointed by the Council of the Order of Australia, which is a body composed of representatives of states and the Commonwealth and territories for the purpose of awarding Australian honours. This was policy on the run. It was galloping along in a desperate effort to preserve the Prime Minister's position, to preserve Julia Gillard. The government had become the Julia Gillard Preservation Society. The Labor Party had so lost control of itself, had so lost control of any sense of responsibility, of good government, of due process, that it was going to outsource its policy-making functions to the member for Kennedy, or indeed to anyone else from the crossbench who could come up with an interesting idea that might just be able to get something across the line. And it was a reminder of the same chaotic performance that we saw from this Prime Minister after the collapse of the original resource super profits tax that Prime Minister Rudd had proposed, and when that fell over, in desperation to get something done after she had deposed Mr Rudd, what did she do? She sat down with the 3 largest mining companies in the country, sent the officials out of the room and allowed them to write the tax law. The Prime Minister and the Treasurer, the allegedly, or so they assert, champions of the people standing up against the billionaires, advocates for the proletariat, these defenders of the horny-handed sons of toil, these Labor heroes were allowing the biggest mining companies in Australia to write the tax, and that was because they were desperate to get anything passed. And that is what we nearly had today, exactly the same desperation, except instead of the mining companies, it was in fact the member for Kennedy and indeed any other crossbenchers that were prepared to be involved. But as the member for Denison said, this process has been completely shambolic. It was too humiliating, too embarrassing. It demeaned the parliament. It demeaned the parliament to be debating a bill only a few days ago which gave enormous powers to a public interest media advocate the nature of which, the appointment of which, the term of which, the number of which was completely up in the air as they were doing backroom deals with the independents. Well, at some point, the shame, the humiliation, the embarrassment became too much. And what the Leader of the House has done today is acknowledge that these bills are too much of an embarrassment even for this government, and they have been abandoned, utterly abandoned. And connected to that, no doubt, is Simon Crean's call for there to be a spill, no doubt, in order to reinstate the member for Griffith as the Leader of the Labor Party and presumably the Prime Minister. This is a chaotic and humiliating moment, perhaps one of the last moments in a government that has betrayed every ounce of responsibility, of due process, of good government. And the best decision the new Prime Minister can make, if indeed the member for Griffith does return as Prime Minister, is to go straight to Government House and let the Australian people cast their judgment on this sorry Labor mess.